Okay. So I would like to welcome everybody to our fifth student alumni networking series. And we've been doing this as a way for our present students to learn from our alums what kind of jobs are out there, what kind of positions, what kind of work, research, academia, consulting firms, the types of jobs that they're available for people with an oceanography degree and what they might like to do. So today we have one of our more recent alums, Yackar Mauzole, and to introduce her is David Smith, who is the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, who knew Yackar well when she was here as a student. So take it away, David.
Yeah, thanks, Veronica. Yeah, that's true. I got to know Yackar quite well, and very much the better for it. She was terrific here. She came to us kind of an unusual path, and she went to a program where she earned a master's degree at the very prestigious École Polytechnique and just outside of Paris, where she's from. And then she joined us and earned a master's degree with Tetsu in 2014, looking at wind-water interactions, and then moved over into Peter Cornellen's lab and earned a Ph.D. in 2017, working on remote sensing of fronts. After, I'm hoping she'll tell us the story. She went to Caltech for a postdoc and then now is doing a postdoc at Scripps. And so I will say I always thought that during her time here, I think Yackar was the most fashionable of our graduate students. She was.
I don't know about that.
So with that, take it away.
Okay, well, welcome to this talk. Thank you, Veronica, for inviting me to give this talk. So you can see here the title is A Journey to Become an Oceanographer, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I do remote sensing, so I try to get a very nice oops, no, spoiler. It's my mouse, sorry. I try to give a pretty nice picture of New England from space. So you can see here you have Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Block Island right there, and most of our island also here. So sorry about the mouse malfunction. A short outline. I know I've been introduced already a little bit, but I will go further into who I am, especially for people who are more recent at GSO who may not have met me maybe before. I will go on to describing a little bit of my past and some of my motivation to get the work I do and why I am an oceanographer. And also quickly, briefly, I will go over some of my previous work and some of my current work. So yes, a little bit about me. So David said that I am from Paris. Yeah, I was born there. So you can see, usually those are my favorite place. This is my favorite ice cream place, for example. They serve this kind of ice cream over here. And if I'm not there, you can find me maybe at one of the bakeries, that are really frequent in Paris. Or if I'm not in either places eating something, I'm probably in my favorite neighborhood, which is the neighborhood where you have Notre Dame. That's also where my high school is located, and that's also where I was born. I was born right behind Notre Dame. Yes, so my name is Yackar Mauzole, and I'm an oceanographer, specifically at the Marine Physical Lab at Scripps. So Scripps stands for Scripps Institution of Oceanography. It's part of UC San Diego, just like Narragansett Bay campus is part of URI. And so I'm a postdoc there. So for people maybe who are not too familiar with it, it's after a PhD, but before a permanent job. So I'm still kind of in training, but at the same time, I do have more autonomy and independence in my research, but I do still have an advisor. And I specialize in physical oceanography. So I was in Watkins for the most part, with a focus on satellite observations and ocean fronts. So this is a pre-pandemic picture of me in a poppy field, because poppies are the state flower of California. So you can see me outside actually. But yeah, so again, I am French. I was born and raised in there, and also I do speak French. Fun fact, I am severely seasick. So I completed my research course requirements, and after that, I never set foot on a ship because I cannot stay alive too long. But yes, I am what I call personally a dry oceanographer, which is just I work on my laptop. I don't go at sea. I studied oceanography only in the US. So if anyone comes up to me and asks me to explain, to translate anything in French, the chances are that I will be struggling a lot because I don't know the words, technical words for oceanography in French. And a very common trope, I wanted to open a bakery or running a goat farm. It's, you know, it varied over the days, but at the end of my PhD, afterwards, I realized many grad students have this kind of thoughts, probably related to the keyword escapism. But in the end, I did not open either of the businesses, and I did complete my PhD. Also, I would really like to study more extraterrestrial oceans, so the ones you can find on Titan, on Europa. I would be very interested in knowing more about those oceans. This is still brand new research at this point. So this is me in action. This is me at AGU 2016. That was me presenting some of my PhD work to people. And yeah, according to Empower, I'm sure most of you would know, Empower is the mentoring physical oceanography to increase retention in women, or maybe, you know, the acronym is maybe reversed. According to that group, for physical oceanography women, it's only me and Shakila right now as Black oceanographer with PhDs in oceanography. So Shakila is also a former student of GSO. She was there before I came. Right now she's a scientist at NOAA, and she's great. If you ever want to see her at one of the GSO reunion, please do. So now more onto how did I get here, there at Scripps. I just want to know that it was not straightforward, it was not simple, and it was also not easy. I forgot to add this one. It required a lot of work. It required a lot of resilience, a lot of persistence, and also a certain vision for myself. So when I say vision, it doesn't have to be very crisp. It can be pretty blurry at times, where if you ask me what I would be doing in 10 years, it's not sure, but at least I have some idea of what I would want to be or what I would want to do. And so then I joined an engineering school for 5 years. That's a specificity of France. And I became an engineer after that, focusing on material sciences. But I did pursue a specialization, that's the one that David mentioned, in fluid mechanics at École Polytechnique for just 1 year because I already had a 5-year degree. After that, I joined GSO in 2010. I graduated with a master in 2014 and then with a PhD in spring 2017. And in the fall, literally 6 months later, in November, I joined Caltech/JPL as a postdoc. So I say Caltech/JPL because JPL is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory from NASA. This is a NASA center, but that is not managed by NASA, that is managed by Caltech, the university. So I kept the writing like this because that's how they teach us to write it. But yes, so it can be either NASA, JPL, Caltech, JPL. I was a postdoc there for 2 years. I was in the satellite oceanography group, which, fun fact, is also led by a GSO alum. And after my appointment was over, I joined Scripps. So fall 2019, yes, and I've been there since then. Now, yes, if you want to know more, especially from the early days when I was a kid and the journey from being a kid to being an oceanographer at NASA, there's a YouTube video called From Cakes to Space. That video is on Caltech's channel. Because Caltech had an open house event, and so they asked other postdocs to make inspiring videos, and so then they posted them on their YouTube channel. I updated the slide to add the 0.5 because now it's been 10.5 years since I started oceanography officially, so it will be 11 in September, and you can see a pretty picture of our campus with the end there. Now, yes. As I was preparing this talk, Veronica kindly asked for a title, and I was like, oh, what can I find? And I was inspired by the movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I realize some people may be young and not know this reference, but it's actually a Western movie from the 60s. It came out in 1966, starring Clint Eastwood here, still young, playing the good guy. And it was directed by Sergio Leone, who is an Italian filmmaker. These types of movie is called spaghetti western, just in case you wanted a fun fact. But more into my past, yes, there's some good, there's some bad, there's some ugly. And yeah, if you only want to know about the good, definitely check the YouTube video. It's great. It's motivational. It's aspirational. It's fun, exciting, and it's all true. I also want to say that it's all true, but it is kind of incomplete because, well, I'm only presenting the good, because, and I'm sorry to say that, but it is only, the kid-friendly version. It was an open house event. It was for family, for kids to feel inspired and excited about science. I was not about to share the whole grad school challenges there. That was not the place and time. But the truth is, that there have been many obstacles and challenges. And, I thought about it, as a GSO alum, I think that I kind of owe it to the students from my alma mater to be very frank, to be candid and honest with them, that saying it was not easy, saying it was actually really hard. It's still kind of really hard. And so on this specific slide, I want to just go over some of the bad to give you an idea, and also a whisper of the ugly, just so that you are aware that those things are out there, and they did happen to me. So on to the bad, let's get to the lack of representation. I think, this is not something specific to GSO. It's not something specific to oceanography, not even just the US or France regarding science, but clearly there's a lack of representation. This sentence that says, if you can't see it, you can't be it, which I partially agree with. It is complicated because, as I said, I was trying to develop a vision for myself at some point when I was a younger person, and I really struggled because there was no one that I could look up to, really. I met Shekila, I was already in my 6 years out of 7 at GSO, and it was the first time. I didn't know she existed before. So for me, I had sometimes a hard time imagining a certain future for myself because there was no one who looked like me in certain places. So for me, it was sometimes a matter of, is it right for me to aspire to this? Is it right for me to have certain ambitions? Does that make sense? I know that just by me being a Black oceanographer, I kind of already defy societal expectations. So, there is definitely this aspect of thing, which is very systemic. I would just want to, again, emphasize on that. But that has been a weight, especially as I was trying to develop a vision for myself. More into the bad, the hidden curriculum. I updated that actually last night. The point first was my ignorance about academia, which is basically equivalent. But I arrived here, I was 25, I was alone, and I was a first-gen PhD student. And over the years, I really felt like I didn't have the keys. I really felt like I was not aware of what was going on. I sometimes was missing on things just because I didn't know they were happening, or I just didn't know. I just also want to say to the student, just the grad school rule book will not help you to survive exclusively. You would need more than that to survive and navigate successfully grad school, because I found out that there is a lot of implicit, tacit rules, expectations, sometimes codes, sometimes behavior, sometimes just things that are out there that if no one tells you about it, you're not about to know them. You cannot guess them. Cultural also aspects. And one thing that I realized some years after was that if you don't know, typically then you don't ask, because you don't know what to ask. You don't know whom to ask to. So you don't ask. But when you don't ask, then you don't get. So sometimes for me, it would translate into missing out on opportunities, funding, mentorship, or other things, just because I was not aware that those things were going on. Now, that's still kind of systemic, but if we go on to the kind of people that I've met over the years, again, it's been over actually more than a decade, because I should say, I was actually a student for 3 decades, from kindergarten to the end of my PhD. So there are things that I will mention here. Please don't feel attacked, because some things, you know, really happened across institutions, across education levels as well. So for example, for this, you know, I can remember a high school teacher. So for example, who thought I wouldn't graduate high school, which is fun. But yeah, there are people out there who didn't think I would make it. And when I say not make it, it will be as a student, as a PhD, as an oceanographer, as a scientist, or as an expert. They just, not out of malice, I think, but they just couldn't imagine it. They couldn't picture it. So they just didn't think I would make it. But I want to say they're not alone. There's another type of people that I want to mention in the category that is bad. The people who do not expect me to make it. And there's a nuance there, if you can catch it. At this point, you know, somebody can come and say, oh, wow, why do you care so much about what people say? Just focus on the science. If your science is good, it doesn't matter what people say. And that is kind of, you know, not really accurate, because it ignores the fact that academia has an embedded power structure in which students tend to be at the bottom of the totem pole. So you do depend as a student on other people to nurture you and to help you be successful at some point. So if sometimes people, or some people, do not expect you to make it, to be successful, and you're a student, that's a problem, you know, and that again makes the journey a little bit harder to be successful. Because as I found out over the years, people do not expect you to be successful, or me to be successful, to be honest. They also tend not to spend time, energy, care in a student like me, because what's the point? She's not going to make it. So, you know, why would I spend my time on that? The same people also typically do not see the need or the point to invest in someone like me, like time, energy, opportunities, network, resources. Since we don't think I'm going to make it, that would be a waste, right? So for them, I think it makes more sense to invest in students that they know, or that they feel, or that they believe will make it. And typically, I will be honest, that hasn't been me most of the time. But, you know, this is, again, something where, you know, that contributes to the struggles over the years. But still on the people stuff, you know, but different. There's also feelings of alienation, isolation also, and the lack of support. So I will be quite brief on alienation and isolation, but to give you some context, I've been the only Black person in any space since I was in high school, so basically half my life. And so sometimes, you know, just it feels lonely sometimes, I want to be honest. Now, regarding the alienation, it's more subtle, but it can come in the forms of people not saying hi, not acknowledging my presence in some spaces, or, you know, just me being forgotten sometimes out of meetings, out of events, out of even informal events, or just like nobody thought of, you know, letting me know or inviting me or letting me join or anything like this. So if it was a one-time event, that would be a thing. But if it happens throughout the years, then there is definitely on my side I'll also be brief, but let's say financial, it's me not being paid for 6 months straight during my studies, you know, having to live on my savings. That would be a good example of lack of support. On that note, also, I just want to shout out David Smith for supporting me because that was not fun living in the US by myself on my savings. So I just want to thank him and acknowledge his effort to carry me through the finish line the last year. But yeah, as bad as that was, or as bad as that sounds, still in the bad. But you can see we're reaching the bottom of the slide. We're almost done. And I won't go over those things after, but still, I just want to touch on a little bit of the ugly to give you some insight. And so I hope we can all collectively dip our toes into that. The strain mental health. Obviously, you know, unsurprisingly, I would say, all of those things and more contributed to strained mental health. And yeah, in my case, I want to say that it was a combination of stress and anxiety over stretches of time. So it's not punctual events that are very stressful, like let's say the comps or the thesis proposal defense or something like that. It's just over the years, over a stretch of several decades that I accumulated the stress and the anxiety and never really got a break. So my mental health suffered from this. And it's one thing if your mental health suffers, but it's another when it starts creeping into your physical health. And in my case, I did get sick quite a lot towards the end of my PhD, to the point where my mother had to book hospital appointments for me in France, to see experts. And I remember seeing one in Paris where it was an old chill guy doctor, and I'm sick, please help me. I don't know what's going on. And he was like, so what do you do in life? What's going on? And I was like, yeah, so I do this, I do that, but can you help me? And he said, basically, there's no cure. I have no cure. You just need to be less stressed, which is a fun thing to say to a grad student at the end of their PhD. Not very efficient, but at least, he was not the only one telling me that it was only stress related. So for the current student, I just want to encourage you to listen to your own mental health and don't feel like ashamed or weak or whatever just because your mental health is struggling. Just, do not feel ashamed to also seek for professional help because sometimes it can truly help. In my case, I was straight 7 years at the counseling center of URI because it was just too much for just me to handle because, again, my family is not here. And so I just wanted to touch on that point because it is a very big part of my journey, of having been stressed or under stress and anxiety and sometimes distress as well. But now, another thing that can contribute to strained mental health, and that would be the last point, the passive and active sabotage. And I want to just, put a disclaimer out there. The reason why I'm talking about this here is because for someone who is not familiar with me and my story, if you want to understand who I am as a person, or if you want to understand who I am as an oceanographer, you cannot do that if you don't know certain parts of my story. And that is one of those parts. I just want to put a disclaimer out there. This did not just happen at GSO, so please don't look for guilty people. But yeah, so what do I mean by passive sabotage for students? So if you are a student or even an early career researcher and you work with someone and this person is really excited about your science and the result that you're producing and everything, but you come to realize that they don't really care about you as a person, as an individual. And so because they don't care about you as a person, they probably also may not care about your success, your personal success. And so what happens is that because they don't really care, they don't do anything to help you be successful after you leave them. Or more accurately, they do nothing to help you to prepare you to be successessful. And so what happens is that, let's say at GSO, students are smart, they're capable, they're hardworking. So eventually, you do graduate from GSO, and then you find yourself on the other side, and you're like in the big world, and you're meeting other people, and they're like, oh, so do you know this? And you're like, oh, no. Have you done that? No. Do you know this person? No. Have you been there? No. Do you know this technique? No. And you're like, what happened? Looking back, like, oh, why? How do I not know all of those things? And it is because I don't think it's the institution, but mostly the person that you worked with who didn't really care about your success and didn't help you be prepared and ready for the next stage of your career. So that I would call passive because they just do nothing to help you. But, I've witnessed this and I also experienced this. I saw that happening to some of my friends, even from other institutions. So I just want to say this is, again, a very systemic thing. Regarding the active sabotage, so again, you have to place yourself in a situation where you're a student or an early career researcher. And this time, the person you depend on, you work with, they actually intentionally expend energy so that you do not succeed. It's not that they don't care about your success. They care that you do not succeed. And in this case, you know, because again, you have to take into account the power dynamics here, it can make life really, really, really challenging because it is hard to get out of a situation like this. I would say in my personal case, both situations, one or the other at some times, spanned over several years. And in my personal case, again, I am still suffering from the consequences of this because it is hard to come back from something like this. So I just wanted to touch on that, just in case, you know, you were wondering. But I want to say, yeah, over the bad slide. And now we're on to my motivation, you know, so I am still here despite everything that I mentioned, just because, you know, I love oceanography, I love research, I love science. I probably wouldn't do anything else. I don't think I could do anything else. And I also refuse to be pushed out of the field. I certainly refuse to be, you know, pushed out of the community. Now, regarding my personal motivation and my personal research interest, I have basically two different categories of interest. I like submesoscale processes. So submesoscale is between a few tens of kilometers to less than 100 kilometers in spatial scale, something like this. So of course, I like ferns, but I also like filaments and sometimes eddies, sometimes. And also, you know, one of my goals, if we can say it this way, is to become proficient in several ocean variables, ocean satellite variables, so that I can answer questions more efficiently. So again, going back to what I said about a vision for myself, I thought about it, and one of the vision I had is if you had a fan, and each side of the fan is a different ocean satellite variable. So you can see here, the sea surface temperature, sea surface height, sea surface salinity, chlorophyll A, ocean color, which is slightly different, surface winds, and ice. So for me, the way I see satellite oceanography is you can have different variables. And as of today, I can work with 4. I do not master 4, but I can work with 4. I haven't touched on those last 4 yet, never had the opportunity, but I am working with those 4. You know, starting with working with Peter, who is an expert in surface temperature. I went on at GPL working with an expert in altimetry, who has been involved in all the altimetry missions in the US since they started. So now I'm working more onto that aspect. My current advisor is not an expert in satellite, but she's an expert in salinity. So I'm learning right now, and chlorophyll A is just on the side, but always there. So I also use it sometimes when I can. I will see for the last 4 at some point. Now, what did I do at GSO? Yes, my master was about simulations of sea spray interaction with turbulent air. So that is in the context of tropical cyclones, tropical storms. So let's say you have very strong winds at that time and lots of wave breaking, so lots of sea spray being generated. And the assumption for this work was that maybe the sea spray could alter the drag coefficient right at the surface when you have tropical cyclones. And so we ran simulations using lattice-Boltzmann method. There's a paper if you want to check, but basically I'm showing you here and here, those left-hand side panel are when you don't have any sea spray, and you can see that the airflow is turbulent and you have some structures there, right there. But if you do have a certain concentration of sea spray droplets released into the air, the turbulence can be suppressed because there's a transfer of momentum between the 2 phases. So you would have turbulence is appearing like this, so an organized flow actually. So that was pretty interesting. But then I moved on to do my PhD, on which I will be very brief. Basically worked on France and on satellite observations. If you are interested in this, my PhD can be downloaded from my webpage. But yeah, so the goal was to produce an updated version of the global atlases on fronts, on thermal fronts. The first one was by Legekis in 78, something like this. And then Igor Belkin, who used to be a scientist at GSO, also produced a series of regional maps for front. And then I came after, about a few years after him, maybe 10 years after him, to produce not just this map, but actually 4 other maps, because I had the seasons, where it shows you the location of thermal persistent fronts across the global ocean. All right, so yes, if you are interested, please let me know. And then on to my work as a first postdoc. So this time I did combine altimetry, SSH, and sea surface temperature data, the fronts. And basically, at first, I just wanted to know what was going on in the region. So I just played the two together, did a time series, and then tried to figure out. And I found out that this is July, August, September, October, monthly aggregates. And typically, fronts will be aligned with geostrophic structures or geostrophic patterns at the surface, but sometimes they are not aligned. You can see right here of Baja California. Sometimes some years we were analysis from simulations using the MIT GCM, which is an ocean model. And so this paper is also available from my website. It was published last year. Now on to my time at Scripps. Yes, so right now I am working with my advisor, who is a part of the MISOBOB project. So MISOBOB is monsoon intraseasonal oscillation, Bay of Bengal, a monsoon. So yes, this is in the Indian Ocean, and I'm not that familiar with it. So for me, it's a new challenge, a new region to explore. We are focusing on the red box. And yeah, my advisor is a seagoing person. So you can see the black star is where she was about 2 years ago. And for me, you know, I just used my knowledge of satellite observations to help figure out what was happening and also bring some like zoom out action. So if she is on the ship, sampling the ocean, looking at a filament or a front, I can look like at the global picture or the regional picture with satellites. So here you can see that was where her ship was. This is the sea level anomaly. That's a derived product of altimetry. So it shows me, oh, okay, I have 4 mesoscale eddies in the region right there. But if we zoom in that region here and I use sea surface temperature, I can see that there's a cold coastal patch of water right here that is actually stretching right there. But after that, because it's a monsoon time, it's full of clouds. So I see nothing. This is why you see all the gray here is just patchy because too many clouds. So I use altimetry again. This is a derived product of altimetry called depth of exponent. And then I can see actually the shape of the coastal blob of water being stretched out by the 2 mesoscale eddies. But also, if I use chlorophyll, you can see here, again, it's very patchy, monsoon clouds. But if on the same day, I can see that there's another filament going on right between those 2 eddies right there. And that is a nutrient-rich filament according to the chlorophyll profile. So you see that you can combine different satellite observations and get something out of it. The last plot I will show is a more recent plot. Yes, I was very fast and wrote SST by default. It was actually SSS, sea surface salinity. So you can see it's very fresh right at the river places right there and right there. We have several river systems in the Bay of Bengal. But then, you know, the black arrows are showing you the geostrophic velocities, and the black dots are showing you the shape of the filament that I was talking about before. Again, the red star is where my advisor was at that time of the year, sampling the filament. So, you know, if you combine different satellite observation, you can get a pretty synthetic image of what is going on. So right now I am working on understanding better the filaments, especially like this one is not an exception. They tend to happen about every year, but you know, there are some characteristics to this. So I'm trying to check my time series of different satellite data and figure out what is going on. And now, so if you ask me what's in the future, nothing is sure. I want to say we had last year something that proved that, you know, having definite plan is not always useful. So I would want to become an oceanography professor, if not at least to contribute for the lack of representation, but also, you know, to kind of be in the system to change it a little bit, so that, you know, I personally I'm of the mindset that if I suffer, it should be for something. I'm not of the mind that if I suffered, you should suffer too, but more like, okay, if I went through this and that was not fun, let's just prevent other people from going through this. So that's basically my personal motivation on that. So I do not know. The short answer is I do not know what I will do. But when I do know, I will let Dave Smith and Veronica and also know about that. So you'll be aware of this. Now, I want to thank you all for your attention, but also I want to thank all those people. And this is not exhaustive. I just want to say, please don't be offended if you don't see your face. It is not exhaustive, but I also want to say that, yes, it's my personal journey or it's my personal path to become an oceanographer, but I am not alone. I don't always walk alone on that path, and without any of those people, I wouldn't be here for many reasons. And so, I just also want to acknowledge that, yes, I made it all the way to here, but not just by myself as a solitary person, warrior. I do have also people who do care about me. And so I just wanted to acknowledge them. The very last bit, if I still have some time, and I will just leave you on that, some life lessons, especially for the younger students. One thing that I really realized is that in most of the challenges that I encountered, oceanography as a science, just oceanography, is not the issue. If I have issues, if I have difficulties, it's not due to oceanography, except for GFT. But we don't care about this. But typically, it's the people, it's the system that you have to work in, especially as a first-gen student, especially if you're from a marginalized identity. Typically, it's not the science that will cause your problem. So when you get, into tough times, like let's say rejection of papers, rejection of jobs, rejections of funding, always remember, why you started, why you started grad school, or also why you study oceanography, and that can help you stay grounded, even when things are difficult. And also, I just want to touch on that briefly. There are many, many careers available with an oceanography degree, so don't think that you're stuck. Don't think that things are binary or anything like that. Just really carefully explore your options, because there are things out there that will make you happy. Also very important, your worth as a person should not be and is not actually determined by your performance, either at school, like comps, exams, whatever, or in your job as a scientist, like the number of papers, the number of grants, whatever. That doesn't make you a good person or a bad person, or that doesn't make you a valuable person or a non-valuable person. Just be very careful about those things. Always, take your time carving your own path. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And also look out for people who mean you well and want you to be successful, because those people will bring to you opportunities, mentorship, and support. The last thing that I want to touch on, especially in regards to the pandemic, your science will be better if you are a more complete and wholesome person. So yes, science is great, but science should not be your entire life. You should have hobbies and passions and interests and other people in your life. And you should have a balanced life if you want to bring more to your science, And if you are, or even if you're not, a person of a marginalized group, always bring your whole identity to the table. Don't think like, oh no, I shouldn't say those things, or I should behave a certain way, the famous code switch. Try to always bring yourself completely to the table. You shouldn't have to just hide pieces of yourself to be a scientist. So yeah, on that, I thank you. I am all done. And I'm ready to take some questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Yackar. That was useful for so many students and graduates. Thank you very much. Thank you for being so open about yourself and your journey. So there's a bunch of questions in the chat.
Ooh, okay.
And also, if anybody wants to just go ahead and speak up too. Peter, do you want to read what's in the chat?
Yeah, thank you. And Yackar, thank you so much for that. It's a lot of thank yous right now, comments, and really an inspiring story. So I would honestly open this up to the group. If someone wants to ask a question, either in the chat or speak up, please feel free.
I don't eat people.
Yeah, and we're going to stay open for a few minutes for questions from the general audience. And then we will close to be just for the discussion with just the students.
Sure. I have the time. It's Monday morning.
That's right. You've got all day.
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay.
Question from Victoria.
Hmm.
How did you go about building your network as you move forward in your career?
At the beginning, when I was, a young adult, like 25, 28, something like this, I would come and think, oh, networking, like it's a dirty thing to do. Like, oh, you're trying to use people to step on to get into your career and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, no, I do science. I don't do networking. That's for, non. You see it. I don't see it as exploiting people. I see it as meeting people with common interests. So usually, let's say, I develop several strategies, so I will be quite brief on that. But let's say we have an upcoming ocean science meeting next year in Hawaii, right? So for me, for example, I would be like, okay, so first I look at the sessions. Then I look at, okay, what's interesting to me. I look at the scientists that I would like to meet or things like that. And ahead of time, which I did for this ocean science meeting last year, ahead of time, I will email them saying like, hey, would you have time for a coffee? The higher the person, the less time they will have. So typically I would say, do you have time for a coffee? Or can we meet between things? And, usually people are pretty nice if they really don't have the time, which I don't think that happened, but usually they would take the time, most people, 5, 10, 15 minutes, if more like 30 minutes. If they really can't help you, sometimes they can also direct you to someone else. But the way I see it is that I just want to learn more about those people. So typically it's not like, oh, can you help me get a job? That doesn't work out this way. I just want to say, for example, for me to work at NASA, it took some time, but I first met at Ocean Science meeting a program manager, and I was like, hi. So I heard there are oceanographers at NASA. How does that work? Like, how do I get there? Literally, how do I get there? And he said, well, there are different paths. There's path A, path B. I took path B, which is basically, applying for a fellowship, which I didn't get, but applying for a fellowship. I still got to work with the same advisor, but I didn't get the fellowship. But, asking people and then being very generally about like, do you care about them? So for me, I spend some money spending Christmas card. I would be honest. I write lots of Christmas card also. And I also make sure that, after the conference or after meeting the people, I let them remember that I exist. Hey, we met, it was great. But mostly, it's not about when you network, it shouldn't be dirty. It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm using people. It should be like, oh, let me meet other people who are interesting and maybe I can learn from them. Either because, like I said, it's a program manager at a governmental agency, or it's someone that is an expert that you read the paper of and they're going to be at that conference. Okay, because the pandemic is over, right? So the conference are going to be back to physical, but those people will be there. So just shoot them an email. If you don't answer, it's not that they're mad. It's probably they're just overwhelmed. So I also want to say that if you try to network with people way above you and they're like, don't answer, it's not that they don't like you or that you were rude. Probably they saw it passing, like, oh, I should reply, and then they forgot. So don't take it personally. Just be like, hey, I just wanted to know if you saw my email. Do you still have some time? Blah, blah, blah. And for me, I try to be proactive in the sense of like, I've become better at cold emailing people. especially at GPL, regarding the extraterrestrial oceans. And I was like, wait, so you're telling me there are oceans out of space? I should know more about this. So you start stalking them lightly on GPL, being like, so this person, that person, and then emailing them. And sometimes, if you email the right person, they'll be like, oh, I know who you should talk to. And then it starts a chain. Oh, did you talk to this person? Oh, you should also talk to that person. At the end, if you are successful, the last person will recommend you the first person. They'll be like, oh, you should totally meet this person. And be like, yeah, actually, I that's funny you said that. I met them. Like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So, sometimes, there's also a chain. I find that oceanography is a small community. So people know of each other, or they know each other. I mean, people from Scripps know people from Mauzole, from GSO. It's a small world. So if you start, emailing people and say, I just want to have coffee, or I just want a 30-minute Zoom, or 1 hour Zoom, or 45-minute Zoom, my schedule is available. Just let me know when you have time. Something like this.
Thank you. Victoria had a question.
Yep. I think, yeah, we just did that one. I think we also have one from Amanda. We have a few questions actually lined up. So this is coming from Amanda Babson. Has your experience doing a second postdoc been more about gaining new science skills and experience, or more networking and professional skills? And what's your advice for people who are doing one postdoc considering a different one?
So my second postdoc is mostly because I feel like I didn't learn everything that I personally needed to get to the next stage. I still needed some training because my appointment was really just 2 years on the day. So there was only so much I could learn, and I didn't feel like I was prepared enough for like the next stage. And so now it's not about the networking, because I don't do much network right now, because I started my postdoc at Scripps months before the pandemic and the confinement. So I can't say I did a lot of networking during my second postdoc. For the skills, yeah, I'm learning new skills. And I'm learning also, not just research skills, but also people skills. Like if you have to do collaborative projects or things like that, or for example, also writing grants for proposals, which I didn't have that skills before. So, that's besides just the research and data analysis. If you want to do academia, there are many other skills that you need to master. And let's say proposal writing is one of them. I am learning that right now with my tutor, or, writing more successful papers. I am also learning that right now. So yeah, if you want to do just one postdoc, that can work. It depends on the institution. Some have, just like GPL, very strict limit on how long you can stay. And some are more flexible, especially universities can be more flexible than national labs for the time you can stay. And some people will stay 2, 3, 4, 5 years until they feel ready, or they are ready to get to the next stage. So if you intend to do just one postdoc, I would say don't necessarily go for the ones that have strict limits, because you may find yourself like, oh no, I don't know everything. But it can be, as if you do have a certain vision for yourself or for where you want to be. For me, the first postdoc was, okay, I need an expert in altimetry to get to have those skills. So that was very clear in my mind that I had one expert in my PhD. I wanted another expert for my postdoc so I can learn more. If let's say that you're someone that is a modeler and you're like, well, I don't have any cruise experience. You can go and say, well, I'm going to help you. Like I'm helping my advisor with satellite stuff. I can help you with the model, but I also want to tackle this and this. My key word for that would be to be very intentional. So if you say, oh, I want for myself to learn abroad, or I want to be in a certain environment where I know there will be lots of collaboration, or I want to learn about other types of satellite products, something like this. Be very intentional when you contact people to express your vision. And yeah, remember some of them have term limits, so that can be a problem. But definitely, keep an open mind. Not everything will be under your control. That's also a thing.
Great.
Yeah, we've got a few more questions, Yackar, if that's all right. Kenley Martinez says, you've had such an incredible journey to become a physical oceanographer. You spent a great deal of time at GSO. So what in your experience can GSO do better to truly build a foundation of support and equity and justice for students not from the dominant culture? Clearly, there were significant gaps.
For me, it would be very basic first. Can people just care? Because it turns out what I learned personally is that, at least in oceanography, I'm not going to talk for all STEM, all earth sciences. A lot of time, people are not mean. There are very few people who are mean and bad and whatever. It's very few. But most people are nice, but not very kind. Right? So for me, it wouldn't be like, we have to revolutionize the oceanography or GSO. We just need people who care. Let's say, for me, David Smith cares. If I'm not being paid, he cares and he's trying to help me get paid. For me, if there's some resistance for paying my student fees, he's gonna go and say, please do your job. Or if I had issues at some point with the main grad school, because I transferred from master's to PhD, I had issues. They were like, you're short on credits. I was like, no, I'm not. I have 2 masters. Because he cared. We managed to solve that. It took some time. It took some weeks. But just, sometimes it's not about like big actions, but can you just check on your students? Like, let's say during the pandemic, can you check on your students and say, are you okay? It's very small, but I swear, if you ask your students, are you okay? And you actually listen to the answer, you may already see a difference. If you pay attention when they talk to you and you remember some small details like, oh, they have a partner, or oh, their parents are sick, or oh, their cats died, something, it can really make a difference if you already care a little bit about the people. Another thing that I would say is that I think there is a lot of bias, implicit bias, but that's not GSO just, it's just all science where, like I said, sometimes people do not expect you to make it. It's like, actually, I'm smart. You should probably believe that I can make it because I made it so far, and I'm the only one. So if only sometimes people would just believe more in their students and also have more affirmations. Another thing that I really want to mention is keeping everyone accountable. So if you see a student suffering, don't just turn around and be like, no, I don't think so. I think it's probably because you're not working hard enough, or just because no. If you see something going on, try to hold also your colleagues accountable. That I think is a big thing that I think because of the power dynamics, sometimes it's hard. And I have seen not just at GSO, but also other places, some abuse going on, and people are just like, oh well, it's like, no, it's not just people are suffering, and like I said, sometimes it can creep in your physical health as well. So it's just sometimes just people caring, not just about the science and the result they produce for you for your annual evaluation, but do you care about the people that work with you? So that would already make a big difference, I think.
All right, thank you for that. So we have a few more here. Let's see, another question from Victoria Fulfer. Do you find it difficult when looking for postdocs or future jobs to find a match between the type of work or research you want to do and the type of environment you want to work in? And how'd you go about making sure the community/environment would be a good match?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answer because it's a thing that I found out that some places are, and again, that's not just oceanography, that's for almost all fields, but the more prestigious they are, the more toxic they may be. So it doesn't always go hand in hand, but you find out the ones that are excellence and the brilliance and blah, blah, blah. They are extremely competitive. I personally consider GSO more like a family type of business instead of the super competitive program, even if it is very demanding. But it's not the jungle. But sometimes you find some stuff on paper and you're like, oh my gosh, that looks so excellent and stuff, and it's extremely competitive. So if your nature is not to be extremely competitive, it can be really hard. So it's tricky because you can never know unless you have a friend who's been there, or someone directly who's been there. You cannot tell from paper or from a website what the environment will be. You can only tell if you meet the people, let's say at conferences, networking events, or other things, or if you have like friends from other institutions who can tell you, because sometimes on paper or on internet, you cannot tell whether the environment is going to be okay or not. But one thing you can try to find out is how many people worked in those labs, what is the demographic, where are they now? Did you leave the field? If they left the field, you shouldn't go there. If for example, there is no other woman in the group and you feel like you don't feel like you're gonna be okay with being the only woman, that's another thing. Trying to see, also reaching out to former students, former postdocs, and asking them kindly, just like, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. Usually people at like the early career stage will be very honest and they will not send you to your desk. So just email also former postdoc or students and ask them like, I'm interested in working with this person. Do you think, do you think that would be a good match in terms of environment and stuff? I think asking students and early career researcher would be more reliable than internet or things like this. Yeah.
All right, let's do one more question in the open session before we switch to the closed session with students and recent graduates. So this one is Thomas Lawrence, who wrote, what resources, experience, or opportunities do you wish you had known about earlier in your time at GSO or since graduation?
That's a long list. That's a very long list, to be really honest with you. I will tell you a small story quickly. So Scripps is having a faculty search. So they said, oh, we're gonna have those candidates coming soon, over the summer to give talks. I'm like, oh, sure. I started checking the curriculum vitae of those people and stuff. And and I start realizing like, oh, what? You did this? How do you get to do that? You did that? How do you know that? And certainly, it's like, oh, wait. Like, for example, mentoring undergrad students. It's like, how does that work that you get that opportunity? Or again, for me, the grant writing thing was just, learning that last year in full summer and being like, oh, I think I still have time. And then realizing there are budget people behind who are like, you don't have the time. And my advisor being like, we don't have the time because simply I do not know how it works because I never had to write a proposal for a science agency. I had to write one for my postdoc, but not, to get funding. So suddenly, getting to know, oh, this is how it works. Oh, this is how you should apply for fellowships. This is how you should apply for summer schools. This is how you should, push for your papers to get out. This is how you should push for international collaboration. And this is how you should push to get to conferences, whether domestic or international. And no, you don't have to pay for everything yourself. Sometimes they are, money pots from different places where you don't have to, pay first for conferences and then get reimbursed. No, presenting poster to get poster awards, it's another thing. Being nominated for awards, nominations, fellowship, whatever. Again, this is all, a lot of hidden curriculum where it's like, oh, I didn't know that you could do those things. And so the list is very long because I've been in the field for 10 years. But yeah, lots of like summer school, mentoring stuff going on, funding going on, fellowships, papers, which, I won't go into this, but yeah, a lot of things that when you look back, it's just, personally, it doesn't make me angry. It just makes me really sad. But that's my personal take on that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm just gonna, for Veronica and also everyone in the chat is saying, Yackar, thank you basically for a wonderful presentation and your honesty and a lot to work with. So I think at this point, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Diana and Sarah. And so they can lead this next session that is close to students. So everyone who is not a student or a recent graduate, thank you for being here.
And also any of the surfos can stay on too.
Yes.
Thanks, Yackar.